Armen and Levack, 104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. One of our favorites, Art Stapleton, Giants beat writer and NFL columnist for The Record, joining us now. And Art, where do you stand on the future of Tom Coughlin? We know the report earlier in the week, 99.9% that Tom Coughlin's going to return next year for the Giants. What's your feeling on the situation?
You know, my take on it was in a matter of 2 weeks, you went from 50-50 to 99.9. And I just think that, you know, at this point, you need to ignore the emotions of everything that's going on. You know, you're fluctuating between the debacle of Jacksonville, where it was clean house, everybody's got to go, Coughlin, Reese, Mara, and Kish should sell the team, this is so bad, to now you've won 2 games, and it's, oh, well, maybe we're really close to being a championship team, and we need a couple pieces. I think that everyone in this knee-jerk reaction situation wants to assess it based on what happened the minute before you actually said something. I think Tom Coughlin will come back. I think it makes sense. I think it's the most logical step forward for the Giants. But it would not shock me, and I wrote this earlier this week, that if John Mara wakes up the Monday after the season ends and the Giants have embarrassed themselves the next 2 weeks, which is completely possible, then he may look and say, you know what, this is the direction we need to take, and it's time to move on. So as much as everyone believes that Tom Coughlin is coming back, and I think that's the sane approach, I still think that there is wiggle room here, that we certainly don't know the direction that the Giants will go in come season's end.
All right, I've always been of the question, okay, so if it's not going to be Coughlin, then who? Like, who's out there that fits the Giants' mold to be the next head coach?
Exactly, and I think that is the question. You know, and I think that sometimes does factor in to what John Mara and Steve Kish and the rest of the decision makers in this organization will have to decide. You know, there isn't a Chip Kelly in college where someone's saying, you know what, we want to make an investment in a coach and a change of culture for, you know, the next 10 years. The Giants don't want to change their culture. You know, this isn't a culture thing with Tom Coughlin. You know, this is a wins and losses situation that they feel as though they're stuck in a rut. But Tom Coughlin is the culture that the Giants want. So it's not like they can bring in someone and say, this is our guy. You know, I think the plan before the season is probably, you know what, we're going to be good. They thought they were going to be better on defense. They didn't think that they were going to have to push a Perry Fuel out the door, which is, you know, what the fans want. And certainly, if you read the tea leaves, that's probably where they're going to go as far as bringing in a new defensive mind, or maybe an old defensive mind in Steve Spagnuolo. But the reality is, I think the Giants want to see enough from Ben McAdoo. They like Ben McAdoo, that if this Coughlin-McAdoo pairing works, then when Coughlin is ready to retire and they're on the same page, that Ben McAdoo has proven enough as an offensive coordinator where he can be your next head coach. I think ideally, without anyone actually coming out and saying that, that would be a plan to move forward. But you can't do that now. You can't do that off of 1 year where you still don't know if this offense is really what you want and what you want to put for your team the next 5-10 years. You have to wait and see. So I agree with your assessment 100%. It's, if not Coughlin, who? And the answer is nobody. No one fits the bill better than Tom Coughlin.
Art Stapleton, Giants beat writer and NFL columnist for The Record. And Art, we have Derek Brown in our studio every week for the Derek Brown Football Hour, former Giants tight end, and he played for Tom Coughlin in Jacksonville. And he says, as someone who played for Tom in his first and second year in the NFL, he says that Tom no longer, his communication no longer works with the players, that he ran such a tight ship back in the day that it doesn't translate to this generation, and for that reason he feels like it could be time for a new hat in New York. As someone who's there every day, who's watched Tom Coughlin as he progresses in New York, do you see that at all firsthand, that maybe the way that Tom Coughlin operates just doesn't connect with these guys anymore?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that it's Coughlin's message is not getting through. I think, what people see is a changing NFL. Players on their off days on Tuesdays used to go home and hide in the past. Now players are front and center, whether it's, Odell Beckham Jr. at Madison Square Garden watching LeBron playing a game, or Antro Roll in his weekly radio report, or Eli Manning in his weekly radio spot. And I think when players talk, I think the old school player believes that they're talking out of turn. And, for Tom Coughlin, I think Tom Coughlin would prefer to have none of his players on the radio talking about what's going on with the team. But I do think that, he's adjusted to the way the NFL is now. And I think a lot of it has to do with players policing themselves. The Giants have a young locker room. The last two draft classes, including the rookies this year, it takes a lot to get these guys to understand what it takes to win in this league. And I think they have respect for Tom Coughlin, but, it's not about turning on, the TV and saying, look, this is where we were in 2007. This is where we were in 2011. I think Coughlin still gets through to these players, but ultimately it's got to be done beneath Coughlin, if that makes any sense. Yeah. They need players in the locker room that connect with each other. They need assistant coaches to be able to get the plan across. Then it comes to the coordinators, and then it comes to Tom Coughlin. So I don't think he's lost the locker room. I don't think the players have stopped paying attention to Tom Coughlin, but I do think that there is something here that's missing, and that happens when the team misses the playoffs for 3 straight years.
All right, when I look at the defensive side of the ball, I see JPP, I see Antrell Roll. Can you bring both of those guys back? And if not, who's the priority for the Giants this season to bring back?
I think as far as priority goes, I don't know if either one is a pro. But I would say I would want Jason Pierre-Paul back, and I would worry that for Roll, he just turned 32 yesterday. If he's going to look for a big contract, I don't know if I would bring Roll back. I don't. I've defended Roll. I think Roll has had his value here. I'm not getting rid of Roll because he's quote unquote, a talker and, he doesn't get along with players. No, that's not true. But I don't know necessarily if the younger players are viewing Antrell Roll as the leader that he is and he's supposed to be and he's paid to be. But for JPP, I don't know if I'd give JPP a blank check either. I think you have to go within reason for JPP. But Roll has not played well this year. JPP has had a much better season, even if the sack numbers aren't where they were before these last couple games. So I would say JPP would be the priority over Roll, but I would not be shocked if either one is on the team next year.
Art Stapleton, Giants beat writer and NFL columnist for The Record, joining us on 104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. It's Art, at Art_Stapleton on Twitter.
Art, when speaking about that defense, Perry Fuel, a lot of people calling for his head. Does he get a pass because of all the injuries on the defensive side of the ball?
I don't think so. I think, if Tom Coughlin comes back, someone's going to have to pay and take the blame with their job. And I think it's going to be Perry. Unfortunately, I have a lot of respect for Perry Fuel. I think in some instances, he gets a bad rap. He gets a lot of the heat and none of the credit when things work. But there have been times this year where, players are blitzing when they're not supposed to blitz. Guys are breaking free. Now, ultimately, that responsibility falls on the defensive coordinator. But I do think that for some reason the players just are not connecting with him right now. And I think, regardless of how they've played against some of the worst teams on their schedule, I do think that they make a change defensively, which surprises me because before the season I really thought I bought into the idea that this team could have potentially a top 10 defense. And like you mentioned, with the injuries, it certainly hurt them. But I think they missed the boat. They didn't get some of these younger players in the lineup sooner. You know, you look at what a Kerry Wynn has done the last couple of weeks. You know, he's not a headliner, but he's a guy who can make plays. You know, he reminds me a lot of what Hankins was able to do last year. You know, when he's on the field, he's making plays. You know, Devon Kennard should have been on the field a lot sooner. I know he came back from his hamstring injury. You know, that falls on Perry Fuel and his staff. And I think the changes that are going to be made could be as much philosophical as they could the people who are on the sideline calling the plays.
Art Stapleton of The Record with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team. And Art, as we look on the offensive side of the football this week, Eli Manning speaks out and talks about how Odell Beckham Jr. needs to stay humble, that Odell Beckham Jr. needs to continue to put everything into perspective. To Levack and I, this was kind of a warning, kind of a heads up that Eli sees this guy that he could maybe easily explode and get a little bit of an ego. What did you take out of Eli Manning talking about OBJ in that manner?
I don't think it was a message to Odell. I mean, I think, you know, Eli has worked with this kid. You know, you don't do the things that Odell Beckham has been able to do, despite missing all of the time that he missed, without being a hard mark and a study about his game and to see where he is. I think it's just echoing in terms of with everyone building Odell Beckham Jr. up, you know, Tom Coughlin and Eli Manning are both trying to remind him that there's a long way to go. But I think Odell Beckham Jr. is the one who's humbling himself. You know, 2 weeks ago, all the media wanted to talk about after the game was his incomplete pass that he threw Reuben Randall about 60 yards. And all Odell talked about was how upset he was that he missed his second read on a play. You know, you don't hear wide receivers talking about missing second reads on an option pass. You know, then last week, you know, he has 3 touchdowns, 143 yards, 12 catches, and what he's talking about is the one touchdown that he didn't catch in the end zone that was dropped, not the one that was negated by penalty. But then he's also talking about his punt and how that's a humbling experience. And then when he dropped the punt at the end of the game and didn't give the offense a chance to come out in victory formation, you know, that's what he's going to focus on. I think this kid is grounded. I think it's easy for everyone to get wrapped up. But if he was not working, I don't think you'd hear half the amount of glowing optimism about Odell Beckham. I haven't heard that once about how this kid is getting too cocky or too good, you know, too much for his own good. I think it's just a matter of Eli kind of dropping that in there, saying, you know what, we're all. Let's all be focused on what we got to do, and because Eli knows if he wants Tom Coughlin back, if he wants Ben McAdoo back, he needs Odell Beckham to continue to do what he's doing these next 2 weeks and give themselves an opportunity, and give Eli an opportunity to kind of cash in. Because let's not forget, Eli's got a contract situation to come up next year, and the more Odell Beckham can do, the more that makes Eli Manning's quest for a new deal even better.
Great nuggets from Art Stapleton of The Record. And speaking of contract situations, Reuben Randall, it's been highly publicized this year about what a disappointment he's been. He has 1 year left on his deal. Do we just expect the Giants to keep him on the roster next year, let him play out that final year, and then at this point, he wouldn't return? Is that just what's expected of Reuben Randall at this point?
Well, I think if you're the Giants, you look at the contract. I think he's going to make, $600K, something like that next year in the last year of his deal. I think you hope that whatever Reuben's gone through the last couple of months, especially the last couple of weeks, maybe it's just a phase that he's going through. I'm not sure. But you hope that you see the talent, you see the inconsistency, but you see the talent there for him to be a complimentary wide receiver in this offense. And I don't think you bail on Reuben Randall because there's no reason to get rid of him. Obviously, if someone came to you and said, look, we'll offer you a third-round pick or a second-round pick for Reuben Randall, you would seriously consider doing that. That's not going to happen. So he's not a major cap hit to keep on the roster. It's unfortunate if he becomes that fourth or fifth wide receiver on the team because there's a lot more potential there than what he's showing. But I do think that sometimes receivers go through this, players in general go through this. Reuben Randall is 23 years old, guys. 23 years old. He's still young, and I think that, maybe there's just other things going on that we don't know about. I think the Giants still give him another opportunity next year to kind of be a factor in this offense. Again, go back to the Jaquan Williams thing. He's not. I'm not saying he's going to be the number one or number two receiver on this team, but I certainly don't think that they're going to cast Reuben Randall aside and say, we're done with you, see you later. It doesn't make prohibitive cost sense with this team.
We love us some Art Stapleton of The Record, Giants beat writer, NFL columnist. Check out his fine work on Twitter at @Art_Stapleton. Art, as always, man, great talking to you. Thanks so much for your time today.
No problem, fellas. Take care. We'll talk in the offseason.
All right, man.
Art, you the man, baby. Thank you.